Hey everybody, this is Mike from Hear the Watchman, and today on the Watchman's Report, we're so excited. We have one of the speakers, one of my favorite speakers. He's been at every Hear the Watchman conference. He'll be in Boise, Idaho, August 18th through August 20th for the Hear the Watchman Signs in the Heavenlies Redemption Convention, and you need to get there. To hear him and hear all the others, go to www.hearthewatchman.com. Get your tickets today. Here it is, none other than Mr. L.A. Marzulli from an undisclosed location in the mountains of Santa Monica. L.A., thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's our pleasure. It's always an honor to be with you. We had L.A., his wife, myself and my wife had a wonderful weekend in Dallas, Texas this last weekend, and we were so blessed to, on Sunday morning, have brunch with Pastor Manning and his lovely wife. And I've got to tell you, folks, the conversation that went down at that table between Pastor Manning and L.A. Marzulli was just absolutely stunning. And I was fortunate enough to just be a fly on the wall there, listening in on them. And L.A., what they were talking about was the Shroud. L.A., give us a little bit about the Shroud, your DVDs. Tell us what was going on there.
Since I became Christian, basically 30, and I was drawn to the Shroud. I've heard other people say the same thing. When we interviewed Dame Isabel Pixick, for one of our Watchers, I think it was Signs in the Heavens, maybe the second film in the Watchers series. We sat down with Dame Isabel Pixick, who stated the same thing. At a very early age, she was drawn to the Shroud. Now, before I was a Christian, I kind of knew about it, but it didn't mean anything to me. Well, you know, it is what it is, right? A Catholic relic, I figured. But after I got saved, way back in 1980, that was the game changer. And I remember being drawn to the Shroud, studying the Shroud. I consider myself an amateur sinologist, someone who studies the Shroud. I've kept up with pretty much the new reports, and a great site to go to is shroud.com, shroud.com. And of course, that's the Right Honorable Barry Schwartz's site. We also interviewed Barry for the Watchers series. Barry was the STURP, Shroud of Turin Research Project team photographer. A son of Abraham. And when he was asked to join the team leader said, you know, we need a son of Abraham, because everyone else was a Gentile. And it was really great. So Barry came on as, you know, one of the sons of Abraham. They had access to the Shroud for 120 hours. Out of the 120 hours, Barry was awake for 110 of them. Wonderful man. We interviewed him. Great sense of humor. Very lively, very vivacious. I took thousands of photographs of the Shroud. And again, we interviewed both Barry and Dame Isabel Pixick for a Watchers series. You can see that whole interview. I think it's on Watchers too. By the way, it's on Vimeo, L.A. Marzulli. Just go to the Vimeo link. You can watch it, you rent it, watch it in your own home. So it's cheaper than buying the DVD. But I was drawn to the Shroud at a very early age. And the Shroud is a very enigmatic piece of cloth. In fact, it's the most studied piece of cloth in all of history. No other cloth has been probed, looked at, photographed, talked about, and it continues even until the present day. The Shroud is a piece of linen with a herringbone weave, about 13 feet long and about 3.5 feet wide. On the Shroud is an image of a man who has been scourged, pierced, crucified. There's a helmet of thorns. There's a wound in his side, and he is in. It's basically post-mortem. He's dead, and he's wrapped in the Shroud. He's clearly dead. His hands are folded over his genitals. He has no other clothes on except for that. His hands are folded over his genitals. He is obviously in a state of post-mortem. It's definitely death. So those who don't believe that the image is real, and by the way, I'll tip my hand early, I call the Shroud of Turin, God's calling card. Let's go and see what it says about the shroud. It talks about Peter and John running into the tomb, and they saw the grave clothes and covered his face, was folded, very telling, and placed to the side. That's what we have. And that's all we have. And people go, well, you know, the Jewish burial with all the spices, he was, no. That's the women were coming back to the tomb that morning to basically anoint the body with the spices, because they buried the thing on Passover Eve. They buried the body at Passover Eve. So it all makes sense. Here's what's interesting. The face cloth, the napkin, which was placed over the head. In other words, when they took the body down from the cross, which must have been absolutely agonizing for Mary and everybody else who's participated. Remember, a little sidebar here. Mary has seen him, knows about the Annunciation from the angel, knows that he is the Son of God, the prophecy, an angel appeared to her, and who knows what happened in the 30 years before Jesus' ministry. But there's one very telling little story, and we all know at the wedding feast of Cana. But what's incredible about this is Mary, when the stewards come up and go, hey, we're out of wine. And Mary turns to Jesus and goes, we're out of wine. And Jesus goes, well, what does this have to do with me? In other words, she's expecting him to do something. And he's going, well, why are you hassling me with this? It's not yet my time. He acquiesces at some point, and who knows what's not written in the account. She give him like a look, like a please, we're out of wine, please. I mean, who knows? It's not written. It's all conjecture, and I'll readily admit that. But the one telling sentence that she says, which is one of my favorite sentences in the entire Bible, she says to the stewards of the wine, of the wedding feast, whatever he tells you to do, do it. It's just unbelievable. Why does she say that? Because she knows. She knows who he is, and he's gonna say some weird stuff. Whatever it is, just do it. Don't question it. Don't ask. You know, just flipping do it. And so he goes, go fill those water pots with water, and they're all going like, what? You know, it's like, what? And you can just hear them mumbling. Who is this guy? Fill the water pots with water? What is he gonna do? Now dip a serving thing in a ladle and go give it to the steward. By the time they bring it to the steward, it's already changed. How does that work? And the steward goes, we all know the punchline, you know, you've saved the best wine for last. So getting back to the shroud, Mary's there, and she's freaked. No one gets the crucifixion. Not Mary, not any of the disciples. Nobody gets it. Satan doesn't understand it. Because if Satan knew about the crucifixion, he never would have allowed it to happen. So he's figuring, Satan's going, victory, the planet's mine, it's over. What he doesn't realize is the sacrifice for all men throughout all eternity, before and after, has just been paid. The price, the debt is paid, it is finished on Calvary. The blood, if I can get an amen to that, amen. And is now he's down, and what they do is they wrap the head in the cloth out of respect for the dead. And then can you imagine yanking the nails out? I mean, how is that done? I mean, you know, the whole thing is just incredibly barbaric, incredibly gruesome. So the head is wrapped in a cloth. They take it and they get it to the tomb, and they finally wrap the body in the shroud. They tie it. These linen shrouds had like a long piece of cloth which they could wrap around the body, and then they left. They rolled the stone, and they left. Something happened on the day of resurrection. Dame Isabel Pixick calls a singularity, where time, space, gravity, the physics that we know, everything was suspended. The body was lifted in the air, floated in the air, the shroud was pulled tight, and the body dematerialized in a million points of light. That dematerialization, that singularity, created the image on the shroud. And that image on the shroud is detailed. The forensic on it, you see, people go, oh, it's just a Catholic forgery. You know, ignorance and arrogance. You're ignorant because you've never done any study on the shroud, and you're arrogant because you think you know everything about it. So that's a real deadly combination. Take some time, go to shroud.com, study the shroud for yourself. It is the most piece of calling card. In my opinion, it is the real deal. When you look at the scourging on the body from a Roman flagrum, which is a short-handled whip with 3 leather thongs coming out, and on the end of the thongs are bits of metal or wire, and he was tied to a post. His back was bent, and they were whipping. There were torturers on either side, and they were flogging him. And these guys were experts. And so as the whip would come down, these bits of steel and glass and barbs would bite into the skin, and then the executioner would flick it. And so his entire body was ripped apart. His entire body was ripped apart. And the only place, what's incredible, on the shroud that doesn't show this unmerciful scourging is right over the heart area. Because the executioners knew if they whipped him over the heart, he'd never make it to the cross, which is why he falls several times on the way to Calvary, because he's been beaten literally to a pulp. Literally, his face has been slapped, bruised, and you can see all that on the shroud. There's a bump on the knee, the knee is swollen, the face is swollen. I mean, the forensics on the shroud itself, for a forger to have known this in medieval times, is beyond anything. I mean, it's like, well, yeah, pigs fly too. So I want to address something. The carbon-14 dating that came back in 1982, shroud, forgery. Everybody went, how is that possible? And all the preponderance of evidence over here shows that it's authentic, and the carbon-14 dating shows that it's an early date. This is how it was done. You want to talk conspiracies? Here you go. The team that went over to take the carbon-14 dating from the shroud was supposed to take it from 3 different locations on the shroud. And then, you just don't call up and go, hey, we'd like to come over on the weekend and take some samples. Are you kidding me? This thing goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for a couple of years before they get permission. Everything's lined up. The protocols are stated. The scientists finally get there. They walk into the room. The shroud is laying out. These guys in black suits come in and go, oh, hold the proceedings, shoo everybody out of the room. 3 or 4 hours later, everybody's brought back into the room, and these clowns go, well, we've just changed the protocols. How is that possible? You're allowed to take one sample from the corner of the shroud. They're all going, wait a minute. The corner of the shroud doesn't look anything like the rest of the shroud, and they do it anyway because that's all they are able to do. So they take it, and it comes back 15th century. The guy writes on the board, 15th century, all the skeptics laugh, everybody goes home. The Christians are sitting there going, wait a minute, something's wrong here. Now, let me get a slurp. Enter a man who's a monk living in a monastery. And he goes online and he meets this woman who's interested in the shroud. He is deeply interested in the shroud. The monk is deeply interested in the shroud. And online on the woman, they start chatting about the shroud. And they've got this mutual interest in the Shroud of Turin. And they meet. They fall in love. He leaves the monastery and they get married. Incredible. And I've actually interviewed this gentleman. They posited that in the 15th century, okay, there was a fire that almost destroyed the shroud. And you can see the burn marks in the shroud. The poor sisters of Clare were hired to go and fix the shroud, mend the shroud. The poor sisters of Clare knew a very ancient and mysterious technique called invisible weaving, end-to-end splices in the thread. And that's what they believed was at this one corner of the shroud that they took. So one of the gentlemen who was on the Shroud of Turin research project team said, well, I can debunk their paper in 5 minutes, because he was a scientist who actually had samples from that. He had some of the samples from the corner, okay? So he goes down to his microscope. He puts the sample underneath the microscope, looks at it. He totally loses it. No one's seen this before. There, in front of him, end-to-end splices. End-to-end splices, just like this. One side is linen. The other side is dyed cotton. And he writes a paper, a peer-reviewed paper, before his death, And this is why the carbon dating was skewed. Of course, it's going to come back 15th century because there were crying out loud. And you want to talk conspiracy? I can't think of it. A university in England was given a £1 million donation anonymously for proving that the shroud was fake. You want to talk conspiracies? A £1 million donation in 1982 dollars. You figure that out. You figure that out what that's worth. So all this was, the Right Honorable Barry Schwartz came on the record and told us all this. So the shroud, in my opinion, is the calling card of God. When you look at this face cloth, getting back to that, it's called the Sudarium of Oviedo. Oviedo is in Spain, and we know that this face cloth came to Spain in the 7th century. We know that. It came to Spain in the 7th century. It just shows blood marks. It's not like the shroud. It shows stains. But what's interesting, and this was never done until modernity, never done until the modern age. They took pictures of the Sudarium of Oviedo, the face cloth, which they knew came to Oviedo in the 7th century. No one disputes that. And they took it and they laid it over the shroud. They superimposed it over the face on the shroud. There are over 40 points of congruency between the Sudarium of Oviedo and the shroud, the face of the Shroud of Turin. It's the real deal. Skill of a skeptic will never believe. They'll figure out 50,000 reasons. And you watch Joe Nickel on these ridiculous shows where he, gets a little solution and he has a little face there and he holds the thing up. It doesn't look anything like the shroud. There's no detail. It looks stupid. And he holds it up and goes, look what I did. Here, this is how, nonsense. And these other people talk about Galileo. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. And the reason why they have an agenda, they do not believe in the God of the Bible. They do not believe in the supernatural. Prove that the shroud is a fake. One thing that happened with the late John Paul II under his when he was Pope, they decided to restore the shroud. And when they did this, synologists on the planet couldn't believe it. We all just fell over. They hired this German textile expert, and she went in and she steam cleaned the shroud, vacuumed it, steam cleaned it, and stretched it, thereby removing any and all forensic evidence for future generations. That was flipping deliberate. You don't do that. There's an agenda, because they know as time goes on, more forensic, knowledge doubles every 6 months, whatever. At some point, they would be able to really pinpoint it. Nope, not anymore. All we have to go on is the 1978 Shroud of Turin research project, STURP, the STURP team's evidence. That's it. And I believe, without a shadow of a doubt in my heart, mind, soul, and spirit, that what we're looking at in the Shroud of Turin is the calling card of God. It bears an absolute resemblance to the Bible, the biblical prophetic narrative, that of a crucified man with the nails. And the nails are not in the palms, by the way. The nails go like this. They go through the wrist and come out the other end, because the Romans knew if you put a nail in the palm, it would just rip right out. So they angle the nail and it goes through the bone in the wrist like that. And that's how that works. And the crown of thorns was a helmet of thorns. And the wound in the side shows a mixture of blood and water. And post-mortem forensic of the shroud are absolutely astounding. Again, the scourging from the Roman flagrum. It's just incredible. And when you look at the face on the shroud, it's not some white guy from, Germany. It's a Hebrew. It's a Jew on that shroud. Make no mistake about it. And what's even more interesting is early artworks depicting Jesus resemble the Shroud of Turin.
Well, now, LA, when we were at the breakfast, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had a very interesting disclosure. After they steam cleaned and vacuumed the shroud, wasn't someone able to discover pollen unique to one particular region?
This happened before they steam cleaned the shroud. Once they steam cleaned the shroud, all the evidence is gone. This happened in 1978 with the Shroud of Turin Research Project. What they did is they took tape, okay, and they went into the shroud. They had gloves on. They took tape and put the tape on the shroud and then peeled the tape off. They were able to get pollen from it. All that's gone now. It's all gone. It's all gone. Can't go back. It just ticks me off no end. But in 1978, they took that. They found pollen from plants that are only indigenous in and around Jerusalem. End of story. End of story. You know, what's a shroud? Some kind of get us and take Jerusalem so it can get the pollen on it. You know, so a couple of, a thousand years or 500 years later, somebody can find that pollen and go, ha ha, are you kidding me? Are you flipping kidding me? That's just one thing. And these plants that they found, all this is on shroud.com, shroud.com. It's all there. The pollen evidence is absolutely extraordinary. It shows plants only found in and around the city of Jerusalem. Come on. Then, recently, the two coins over the eyes. The two coins are the widow's mites that were placed over the eyes to keep the eyelids shut. I mean, it's just, the more you study the shroud, I mean, I remember when I saw it and I read a book on it, I just wept at the end. I just wept because I realized, not only did I realize that that's what he looks like, but I also realized in excruciating detail from reading the book what he went through. And that's why it's there. That's why I call it God's calling card. For those of us who look at that, they understand Isaiah 53, that his face was marred beyond all recognition, that he bore our stripes. He bore our stripes. And from those stripes, from his stripes, we are healed. It's absolutely incredible, folks.
I mean, LA, that's just amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. And like I said, I was just so grateful to be at that breakfast that we had and to listen to you talk about it. I know that Pastor Manning wants to have you on the Manning Report. We hope to see you over there. Tell us now, what's next for L.A. Marzulli?
Well, I can't exactly, get into every bit of it, but I'm working on two different films. One, I won't even tell you the title because I can't, but that'll come out in the fall of this year. We're very excited about that film. It's part of my new series, The Watchmen Chronicles. The other film I can say something about. It is on the trail of a Nephilim. We're working on that also. We've taken all the books on the trail of a Nephilim, Volume 1, Volume 2, and then taken the DNA evidence and the 5 chapters that were in Nephilim Hybrids book, putting them all under one roof with a brand new cover. That'll be available probably midsummer. There'll be also a DVD that may go along with it. We're not sure. It might be released afterwards because the information is new and startling. But it's time to really talk about this stuff. I've been all over looking and gathering evidence, specifically in Catalina. That was a 9-footer. We found elongated skulls. The new research we found on the foramen magnum, which is incredible. The mummy that we found in Peru, other skulls that we handled. I mean, it's awesome. And so we're very excited about both films that we're working on.
Well, that is exciting. And I know that you're going to be speaking again at the Hear the Watchman conference up in Boise, Idaho, August 18th through 20th. Do you have any stops before you come to Idaho where people can come and hear your message?
Well, I will be in Peru with the deal. Steve will, Timothy Alberino will also be there. Anselm will be there too, the archaeologist, and yours truly. I will be lecturing. And for those of you who are going on the tour, wherever we go, any questions, I'm yours. I'm yours for the next 10 days once we get there. And, pick my brain. That's why I'm being hired in the And frankly, I love it. I love people asking me questions, and no question is ever a stupid question or a dumb question. There are no such things as dumb questions. Every question leads to, or can lead to, discovery, not only for the person, but for the person that's answering the question, in this case, me. So I'm really excited about that. We come back from Peru. We've got 10 days, and then we're off on a filming location, undisclosed, for this film that we're working on that I can't talk about. And we're going there to film for 10 days. And then, of course, my next speaking engagement is at Hear the Watchman Conference. Can't wait to see you again, Mike and Jeannie and the crew that's going to be up there. I think Russ Dizdar and Pastor Paul are also going to be. And those guys are battle buddies, man. There's some of my favorite people.
Yeah, you've got a real surprise when you get to Boise, Idaho. And folks, you need to go on and get tickets. Just www.hearthewatchman.com. We're bringing over from Israel a messianic rabbi by the name of Zev Porat. The guy is amazing. You can see some of his videos, the interviews that I've done with him on my YouTube channel here. Just truly an anointed speaker. And he actually goes in the streets of Israel to preach the gospel. I mean, the man is fearless. LA, you're going to fall in love with him. And then, of course, we have Carl Gallups, Josh Tolley, Scotty Clark, just some real cool stuff going on. And folks, you want to come because these are the times when you want to be spiritually and physically prepared for the days to come. Listen, LA, I know you're busy. Thank you so much for joining us today here on the Watchman's Report. And folks, I want to say one thing to you. You know, there were some glitches on our end. I could see some glitches as we were going through doing this interview. I have done in the last 2 days probably 10 interviews without a single glitch from all over the country, even outside the country, not a glitch. It's very interesting. And LA and I go through this. It's very interesting that when we start talking about the shroud and really getting into the truth, suddenly, spooky, the internet seems to glitch on us. So bear with us on this one if those glitches do show up on the final product. Important message. Again, LA, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. Take care. Hear the Watchmen, folks. Get your ticket. Hear the Watchmen, plural. Remember, see you in the air or on the air. Thanks for watching.
God bless each and every one of you. Until I see you next time here on the Watchman's Report, we pray that you have a wonderful and blessed day. And remember, be informed, don't be afraid. God bless you all.